Hello, and we're looking at how to get more out of your fitness data. This is the Garmin Forerunner 235, the least expensive out of all the Garmin devices possible. And I got started on this device because I wanted more data for my fitness activities. I wanted to see if data can help me make better fitness choices and help me improve my health and fitness more effectively. When I looked at the reporting capabilities from the web page, it kind of left a lot to be desired. You have a pretty nice looking default reports over here. I mean, the variety is nice, but I want a little bit more advanced analytics. So what I'm going to show you guys today is how to get all of your data into a CSV so you can visualize it inside of Tableau. When you go to your activities page, you have an option to export your activities into CSV. You want to make sure that you scroll down and load all of your activities, because if you start exporting when only a few things are showing on the screen, that's all you're going to get in your file. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to make sure that it loads all the activities until when I bought the device back in December. And now I have all of that loaded. So I click on export the CSV. It gives me this file that I need to rename later on, activities, and I've opened up over here so you can see what it looks like. The activity type is the first field, date time is the next, and there are a bunch of metrics over here. These are the metrics available to me using the Forerunner 235. But there's also quite a lot of very intricate things that I know if I had the fancier watches I would have access to. But this is not a problem. Today we're going to see what we can do with some of our limited items of our data set, including, let's take a look at our distance, calories, our heart rate, our cadence, and our pacing and elevation. Okay, so we're going to be looking at 2, 4, 6, and 9. 9 elements of this, along with 10. Let's just make it a nice even 10 items in our Garmin CSV data. Oops, it's not an Excel file. This is a text file, CSV. I'm going to be opening up this activities file, and the first thing I want to do is clean up the data. There's stuff that I don't need inside of here because it's only going to distract me when I'm trying to configure everything over here. And let's see. So I'm not going to be working with this aerobic TE. I don't need elevation loss. And I don't need all of these items that don't even show any data for me because I only have the 235. I have the cheapest watch. So I'm going to hide the rest. And let's take a look at our data. Okay, so one thing I noticed before I go into the worksheet is that the pace is, for whatever reason, recorded as or recognized as a string. 8 minutes and 38 seconds per mile is my average pace on this date, on this last date. Okay, so my best pace was 6 minutes and 36 seconds per mile. I want to change these into date time strings so that I can use this as a pace. And if you see date time, if it doesn't have a date along with it, it's just going to default to the 1/1900, and I'll show you how to fix that right now. So the first configuration was in the data source, but now we're going to change. Actually, let's change it for both of these fields. We're going to change the average pace and best pace field into. We're going to change the date format for both of these fields to be a custom field, including their hours, minutes, and seconds. So I want this format for the pace so that I can work with it. If I look at what is included over here, let's see how the pace came over. So I'm going to bring over. Okay, so if we remember, our pace was recorded erroneously as an hour in minutes instead of a minutes and a seconds. And this is how you do the calculation. I'm going to create a calculated field, and the first part I need to do is I'm going to need this average pace conversion seconds. I want everything to be in the same lowest common denominator, which is the seconds. So I'm going to take the date part of the hour, and the field is the average pace. I'm going to multiply it by 60 because I want this is actually reflecting the minutes, and I want this to reflect as seconds. So 60 seconds per minute. So I'm going to multiply that by 60 plus date part minute, which is actually reflecting the seconds, and this is for the average pace field. Okay, so what happens with this is now we have this conversion of pace time into seconds. So this is 522 seconds per mile, which is not so helpful. So I'm going to take this conversion and I'm going to make it a little bit more useful. So I'm going to make this into, oh, actually I'll make a different one. So I am going to make another one so you can see the next step in this. So average pace conversion mins. Okay, and this is going to be the average pace conversion seconds divided by 60. So it's 522 seconds per mile, or 9 minutes. Let me go to the default properties, to the number format, and add on a decimal place to this so that it has it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so 8.7 minutes per mile looks a lot more sensical than 522 seconds. And I want to show you my problem with using mile pace for your graphing. When I look at, let's look at my progress, and I only want to look at the progress for running. And let's look at the average pace conversion minutes. I have some stuff over here. Okay, so I don't need to see if this is, if I'm walking with my kids, basically speaking. So if I'm taking more than 16 minutes to do, more than 15 minutes to do a mile, then that is a walk. So I can filter this. So if it's 7 to 15 minutes should be fair enough for the speed. Okay, so my mile per per minute pace when I'm running only, excluding times when I recorded walks with my kids on the trails. Looking at pace, right? You want this metric to go down, but visually that's not such a good metric for improvement, because if we add a trend line to this, this is going down. I don't want to see a decrease. I don't want to see a decrease in my speed, right? I know this is my pace. I want my pace time to go down, but generally improvement is better seen as an increasing metric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pace conversion minutes and I'm going to turn it into something that is more relatable to the layman, which is miles per hour. So I'm going to put average MPH as the metric over here. So if I'm going a certain, it takes me 8.7 minutes to go a mile, then I want to see how long, if I'm going miles per hour, there's 60 minutes in an hour divided by the average conversion minutes, okay? So 60, how many miles can I go in 60 minutes, which is an hour? So this miles per hour, if I substitute this in, now we have something that looks way better. I was going at 5.5 miles per hour before, and I now go 6.5 miles per hour. The next level of analysis you can add onto here is you can look at, I guess, the spread of your speed if you want to look at distribution of values. Okay, so I'm going to add something on here onto the table for the standard deviation. I want to look at the spread of the values. So the average, it looks like, is just about 6, and 6.8 is one standard deviation above, and 5.3 is one standard deviation below. And the improvement that I've seen over this time period has been 2 standard deviations, half a mile being the I guess one standard deviation of change, which is pretty significant if I'm considering the big picture of how do you get faster. A lot of people are really, let's call this a speed trend. A lot of people are really desperate to go faster right away, and they get injured, but I've taken my time to get faster in terms of average speed over time. And this means that my volume of training is much better. And actually, so this is a crosstab. We have our speed trend. Let's look at, I have a distance metric over here, right? I want to see how far I'm running all the time. And I'm going to do this by creating a histogram. I'm going to create bins that are the size of 1 should be fair enough. So distance bins are going to create a histogram. So however many miles and how frequently I've run them. Oh wait, and I want to make sure this activity, let's apply this to all using related data sources. Okay, so I'm only looking at my runs today, and I only want to look at, alright, this is fine, this is only going to look at the, so I want to look at all my running activities and how far I've gone. So number of activities. It has a somewhat normal distribution, but it is skewed right pretty heavily. This is because I'm stretching myself so I can go further and further, with the goal of being able to do an ultra marathon eventually. So the distribution of my values suggests that I really like doing this 5K distance, and this is something I didn't think I would be able to get used to before I started running. I have a pretty good volume of runs in this 10K distance, and sporadically I will, it seems like once every other week, once a week or so, I'll go for these longer runs. But for the most part, everything is centered around this 5K distance, which I've done 84 activities at the 5K distance level. So this is a histogram. And now that I see I've gotten faster and I see that I run a lot, let's see how far it has taken me. I can take a look at my let's look at a bar chart for the distance that I've traveled over time. I want to see the cumulative difference, the running total. Running total, you get it? So all of these bars mean the cumulative distance that I've gone ever since the very beginning. You know, when 2.5 miles was long, when 4 miles was long, and so on. You could see the cumulative effect of doing a bunch of 5Ks, and my ultimate distance right now is 726 miles, which is more than I've done in the previous 2 years combined. And you also see in this daily view, right, I have this continuous date view, that there is a big gap over here. That is when I was bedridden with what I hope was the flu. So running total mileage. And we also wanted to look at our heart rate. So the heart rate is something that I will show you has not changed so much. Average heart rate. Oh, and let's make sure. So my average heart rate, I don't want to include the walks, so I'm going to make sure that my average miles per hour is at least 4 miles per hour. And there we go. We've taken out our walks. Okay. Now, what does my average heart rate show me if I add on the trend line? Basically, no change. And what about the maximum heart rate? Oh, so the average heart rate doesn't show change, but it only has this context when you look at it against the speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my average heart rate over here as another axis. I'm going to update the colors so the heart rate is red and the miles per hour will be blue. These a little bit thicker. Okay, so here we are with the speed that's increased a lot, and this trend for the heart rate to be basically the same when my speed has increased means efficiency. So this is speed and HR trend. Okay, and what else do I want for this view? I don't need to look at this one anymore. I've added it somewhere else. I want to show you guys probably another view, because if heart rate is not changing so much, it could look different if I look at it in a value distribution. So I'm going to aggregate this data by week. And oh, right, hold on. Let me start this over. Okay, so if I'm looking at this by week, you guys know from my data that I started working out in December. But when you're looking at discrete dates, that it's going to put data into these bins, it doesn't look at the year. It's only looking at December as the last weeks of, or this week, the weeks in December as weeks 50 through 53. So I can manually sort these so everything will be in order. What I'm going to create over here is a value distribution for this average heart rate. I'm going to deselect this aggregation, and I want these to be little circles, maybe smaller. Okay, and let's change the color of these to be a little bit, okay, so it'll be a little bit easier to see all of these. Okay, there is a lot of activities over here. I want to make sure only to include, well, I guess I can include, no, I'm going to exclude my walks. So the average miles per hour needs to be at least, I need to be moving at least 4 miles per hour. And for my running, here's the heart rate distribution. I'm going to change this. I'm going to add in a box plot analysis. And let's make it tiny. No, we'll leave it light gray. That's fine. So we're looking at the value distribution week by week of my heart rate. And the magic of Tableau and the value of creating this analysis is in being able to add other variables, other measures to give it better descriptive characteristics. So if I'm looking at my distance as the size over here, right? And let's bring the size back up. I can see over time that even though my heart rate isn't changing, my ability to go further is. But even better than that, let's say I wanted to look at that elevation. Oh, that is not categorized the right way. Elevation. This will be a whole number. And we're going to bring this down here. So this elevation gain is going to become our color. And I want you guys to see the difference between looking at looking at my elevation gain, because I started off on the treadmill. I guess, wait, maybe I can show that in the histogram. No. Okay, so I started off on the treadmill with no elevation gain, and then I started running outside with a bunch of elevation gain, but it's not so easy to see it with light blue to blue. I'm going to change these colors. I'm going to use something with an opposing gradient, and I'm going to put blue as the, I guess, as the dominant, as this increasing color, and I'm going to use red as the no elevation color. On the advanced fields, I want to change some of these fields just a little bit, because I want this to not represent the center or the middle point between the two values. I want this to represent the median, which is about 140. Well, let me make sure about that. If I look at the median elevation gain, 400. Okay. So let's change this, edit colors, and this is going to be 400. The median elevation gain is 400. So most of the time I've been underneath, but recently I have vastly increased the elevation that I can tolerate. So the median being 400 and these outliers being way out here, if I use the average, then I wouldn't be able to see where I'm doing better elevation gain in these weeks. Over here I'm doing more elevation, but it's still relatively weak, and then over here no elevation gain to speak of. So this is the difference that you can make with heart rate with context. So we have a few views, and what else can we do over here? This average stride length, I guess we can, when this is something we could take a closer look at, because this stride length, right, is something that I want to increase along with my running cadence. I want both of these measures to increase. Or if I could also look at the distance between the average and the maximum heart rate. Well, let's look at some of our our running quality metrics, this running cadence and stride length, because you multiply these against each other and you essentially get your speed, because how fast you move your feet and how long you move your feet is your speed. I want to see by date what's my running cadence on a daily basis. Let's bring this in as a continuous field, and let's use that 4 miles per hour mark, to filter it by 4 miles per hour. And now let's look at our running, not our running cadence, our stride length. So here's the stride length. As I start out pretty long strides, but I start running with shorter strides as I'm trying to control my heart rate, and it eventually comes back up. Does this have a trend? Yeah, it looks like the trend is moving upwards. Along with, let's look at this versus my running cadence. So my running cadence, oh, I need better colors for these. So my running stride length will be blue and my running cadence will be green. No, I'm gonna make this purple. Doesn't really matter, we just don't want colors to clash. We want colors to be standardized. So the running cadence has been relatively stable and has taken some dips over here, but you see I'm trending ever slightly upwards towards a faster average running cadence. If we add the distribution bands onto, let's go with the running cadence, and we're going to look at the controls for this. It is pretty well under control. 160 to 169, so I'm right within that average running cadence range. And if I use the distribution band for my stride length, then I see a much bigger change over this time period. So this is going to be stride and cadence. When you create dashboards with your own data, you are able to have that customization level and advanced analytics for something that you may not have even considered possible. If I wanted to put this into a dashboard, I could bring all of these items in. Let's look at our speed. Let's look at our histogram, our run total, and our heart rate with context. Yeah, I can move these things around, but generally speaking, more things are possible when you take control of your data and you build your own things. This is what you can do with the very basics of what's available when you export your Garmin data into a CSV. If you're interested in this, having me make a dashboard for your activities, for your training, whether it's cycling or running or swimming, go ahead and let me know, and then I will make this for you. Email me at daniel.sarmiento@progressbaranalytics.com. Thank you very much.